Okay.
Hmm.
All right, everyone. Good evening, and we got another Jazz Matters podcast with the great Dan Wilson over here on guitar, and of course we have our great co-host, Mr. Vaughn Coulter here from Jazz Beats Radio. I'm Edwin Williams from Jazz Matters, and we want you to go to our website, check us out. We are a nonprofit organization. We do have also on the site, you can learn pretty much anything there is to know about Jazz Matters. You can also move around the site to check out the Jazz Matters store where you can get a T-shirt like this. Check it out, Dan. You got to have
Oh,
one.
yeah. I like
All right,
that. Yeah.
all right, and then you can, of course, donate. We know that there's no other nation on the planet better than donation, so the donations keep us going. And right now, we're going to go ahead and get started with Dan. And Dan, for all the people here that don't are not that familiar with you, just go ahead and give us a little bit of a backstory on you, how you got started, where you from, and
Yep.
basically try to get us up to speed.
All right. Yeah, I'm jazz guitarist out of Akron, Ohio. I started in gospel actually. Just playing traditional gospel, um, and I kind of it was a kind of a natural evolution for me to start checking out jazz. I had an uncle that took me down in his basement and played for me uh, the dynamic duo, Wes Montgomery and Jimmy Smith. And that, from that moment on, I was like, yeah, I want to be a jazz musician. I want to do this for a living. Uh,
Yeah.
some about that just kind of leapt off of the out of the speakers and just into my imagination. Um, and then kind of fast forward 10, 15 years, find myself gigging, and just out of nowhere I kind of I've been going up to New York for about 3, 4 years. I was in my mid and early, and late 20s, and just kind of getting into the scene, getting into sessions, and uh, word got to Joey Defrancesco. He was looking for a guitar player, and the drummer Carmen and Torre actually recommended me to Joey. He's a drummer for Pat Martino, uh, and out of nowhere, Joey sent me an email, or his manager sent me an email saying, "Are you interested in playing with Joey DeFrancesco?" And I wasn't doing much at the time, so I was like, "Absolutely." And then from then on, the my career kind of progressed.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Were you did you get a chance to go to school for music or a school of music?
Yeah, and it's funny. A lot of times I kind of accidentally leave that out because the real school came,
Did the street?
on exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, I went to undergrad at Hiram College,
Mhm.
and I went to grad school at Youngstown State University.
Okay, cool, man.
Hmm.
And it's always been kind of interesting to me how uh, guitarist or bassist or whatever the instrument, a pianist, seem to go through the church situation before they really, it's something like the spirit hits them, not in church, but necessarily in the jazz field, which is kind of strange to me. But all in all, I had another friend, same identical story growing up. His name was Russell Malone, and
Oh yeah.
he started out the same way. And we used to talk a lot about him coming up, and he, of course, like you said, he played mainly in the church, you know. And then one day he heard the song, he heard the spirit, you know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah.
And he had to answer the call, what I mean?
That's
But he,
it, man.
but he's a longtime friend of mine, and I'm not gonna laugh too much about it simply because I did the same identical thing. You know what I mean? It's like the universe. This is your prep school, right?
That's 100%
Yeah.
it, man. And I've always been of the opinion that black music exists in a continuum. You
Yes.
know, all these, especially the African American tradition, you know, blues, spirituals, gospel, jazz, hip hop, they all have the same root. So,
Exactly.
to transition from one to another, is a lot of times seamless.
Yeah, and see the thing is, that's what I see in a lot of musicians, and what I don't see in certain musicians. Like I can almost tell just by listening, whether or not you started in the church, you
Yeah,
know, and it's usually it's got to do, the music has a spirit anyway,
sure,
and you could pretty much really tell when somebody has that element going on for them.
absolutely.
Vaughn, you want to add to this? Because I know Vaughn is itching to answer. Ask you a few questions. So go ahead, let's deal with it.
Sure, sure.
No, okay. Well, I was going to say, I mean, gosh, it, what you just said, Dan, is pretty much um, the lines blur, the blending in of that African American culture, and of course, the culture of where we came from originally. You know, there is no difference. There's no differentiation between the genres because, like I tell Edwin all the time, it ain't nothing but soul, brother. That's all it is. It's nothing but soul. And so, the culture to me is what's being taken away, because of the labels that they place upon the music. And it is the it is suffered from the labels because we know where it comes from, but those in power of the industry and all of that, they want to, since they've been able to monetize from it, they want to make sure that, they want to keep those lines, separate. But, we have to, we know the truth. And as a broadcaster, I try to blend in all of the genres. And, sometimes I met with some difficulty with it, but other than that, just I'm just glad that musicians know the truth, just like broadcasters know the truth.
True.
And that's so important. I think it what you just mentioned kind of follows the path of gentrification. You know, when the culture of a certain area has been built up, and it a lot of times it becomes world famous, and then the powers
Mm-hmm.
that be, once it's built up, move in, and you want to capitalize off of that culture. But
Yeah,
I
exactly.
was having a conversation with my wife, about that whole dynamic, the gentrification dynamic, because it really it applies to music. That we have to understand that um, the music comes from where it comes from. So and every genre of music is tied to a culture.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's no different. If I want to learn something about Italian opera, I better learn something about Italy.
You
And
got that right.
and have reverence for that culture. And I do. Brazilian music is a huge passion of mine, and I consider
Mm-hmm.
myself a student of not only Brazilian music but Brazilian culture. You know,
Wow, good for
and I
you.
think that's important when we're discussing African American music, and that a lot of times that gets lost.
Right.
Yes, indeed.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, even in that context, the Brazilian culture, um, it is, pretty much embedded in African culture anyway. You see what
Absolutely.
I'm saying? And so the element, like you said, the channeling of that particular culture or music from that culture is definitely a mainstream or a main highway to our culture. In this country, it's something that we, for the most part, were created with having. You know what I'm saying? I find a lot of times that like you were talking about the gentrification aspect of it. Well, I mean, you absolutely on point, because if you notice the movement of gentrification, you also notice that once it moves in, the culture of wherever it's moving into, it moves out, and it moves out quickly, you know. So then they are basically reinventing the culture that moves out, but the elements aren't really there. You know what I'm saying? It's almost
Mm-hmm.
like a smoke
Mm-hmm.
screen, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing, because I was having a conversation with my wife about this, and I think what's so misunderstood is that um, even when you move us out of an area, that you don't seem to understand that the culture goes with us.
Right.
So it's going to resurface in another way, you
Right.
know. So
Right.
you get you get the creation of R&B. You get the you get the James Brown sound. You
Hmm.
know, you get the
Mm-hmm.
Motown sound. All those guys were jazz musicians.
Right.
You
Most
know,
definitely.
and you get a recreation. It keeps resurfacing. You know, as soon as
Mm-hmm.
we're and it's been such a strange journey with African American music, because it's been our culture has been co-opted so much, and oftentimes parodied. Like you get like
Mhm.
the minstrel shows, and so the I think
Wow.
that's part of
Yeah.
the reason that the culture keeps changing. You know,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
and but the same elements continue to resurface. You know,
Right.
so
Right.
wherever we go, the culture goes with us.
Well, it's pretty much like what you would say a hidden. It's almost like how could I say it? Like DNA. Okay, the DNA of the culture of most people of color. It stays with them exactly. And like you said earlier, once it's moved in or gentrified, it actually, the gentrification part of it is masking what was already there. And it's almost like a recessive gene that we have, that we can pick it up, take it, go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
mean, right now it's going to be amazing to me what they're going to do when they go to Mars. Okay, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're gonna try. They're gonna take that up there and say jazz from Mars, and then go like, no, you know, it's not gonna be the same.
Yeah.
That's cool though. But I heard uh some of your new release, and
Oh,
it's good, man. And I
thank you.
wanted you to talk a little bit about that, and some of the personnel that you have working on it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's yeah. The new record is called Vessels of Wood and Earth, and I got that title from a uh, a scripture in the Bible that says that in a great house there are not only vessels of silver and gold, but also of wood and earth. And so I took that to mean that uh, a lot of times we see the shiny exterior things, and we place such a high value on those, but those are not really the things that are holding up the house. It's the things that you can't see. It's the less,
Foundation.
yeah, the foundation,
You
yeah.
know.
So, and I found that with every great band, I love James Brown's dance moves. I love his how funky he was, but man, uh, guys like Fred Thomas and Bootsy Collins, Jabbo, Clyde Stubblefield, those guys had to hold those grooves for like 20 minutes while James was talking, you know,
Right.
and
Right.
that should be that should be celebrated just as much,
Right.
in my opinion. So on this album, I featured the rhythm section players a lot more. I think a lot more than usual. Like some of the songs that I wrote, like the first tune, the first voice you hear on the record
Is the base, right?
is the bass. And that was my man Marco Panacea.
Mhm.
Um, known Marco for some years. When I first started going to New York, he was one of the first musicians that I played with, and just a really strong bass player. He solos really well, has great walking lines, uh, and On drums, we had the great Jeff Tain Watts,
Right.
and he actually has the melody of the tune. Everybody else is kind of just playing a part.
Right.
Uh, yeah, I know he's such a fierce, really powerful player, but he also has a real musicality about him. And on piano, my man Christian Sands. I think we met through Christian McBride.
Mm-hmm.
He was playing in his trio for a couple years, and on vocals, Sister Joy Brown.
Mm-hmm.
I met her actually through uh, the great pianist Sullivan Fortner. We had a week long. I was playing at the Village Vanguard. It was my first time. We had a week long engagement there with Christian McBride, and we hang out after hours. And she came in with Sullivan and the singer Cecile McLaurin Salvant,
Right.
and Sullivan sat down at the piano and started playing the hymn, "The Old Ship of Zion,"
Hmm.
and this voice just came out of nowhere. And from the minute I heard her, I was like, "Oh, we got to work together. We got to work together." I mean, she was literally laying down on the couch at the Village Vanguard singing "The Old Ship of Zion," and I was like, it filled up the room.
Right.
So I had to have her on the record.
Cool, man. Well, you had mentioned Christian. How long did you work with Christian McBride?
Let's see. It's about 4 years now.
Okay.
I was working with Joey for about 2 years, and then I met Christian on I think, where did we? Yeah, 2017. He came to Cleveland, and the lady that runs the Tri-C Jazz Festival, Terry Pontremoli, actually hooked us up. She was like, I got there's a guitar player here. You gotta hear. And he was like, oh man, I really don't like when people do this, because he don't know me from Adam,
Right.
And he was like, okay, I trust your judgment, and we played a duo. We played 3 tunes. I never forget. We played Bolivia, Cedar Walton. We played Honeysuckle Rose, and we played Sunny Moon for 2. And this man took that bass apart, put it back together, and I mean, just played just so much incredible stuff. I'll never forget that experience. Then from then on, he kept my information, and he asked me to join his band about like 6 months later.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Vaughn, I know you. Vaughn, can you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Now I was getting ready to see what you wanted to add to this.
I just got a question because I listen to Christian a lot because he does a lot of NPR shows and stuff like that. He sounds? I mean, he seems like he's such a relaxed homebody, And I know he takes the music seriously, but he seems like one of the most jovial and friendly and open spirits I've ever heard. That's how he is in person. I take it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about him. Is, what you see is what you get. There's no, and for somebody with his level of experience, he could easily just kind of have that been there, done that kind of personality.
Right.
But you never get that. I mean, this is like, I mean, he's played with just every jazz legend, and a bunch of pop legends too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the studio session. I was asking him and Tane about Stevie Wonder if they'd ever played with them, and you kind of had to get these stories out of him. He's like, yeah, I played with him. Me and Herbie and Stevie, and it was really deep. But like he's never he doesn't really wear that on his sleeve. It's just kind of an experience that he's lived, and
Right.
that really comes through. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's good, man, because that's uh, those guys seem to last the longest. When you're not, putting it on your sleeve, you just basically let your work speaks for you,
That's
and
it.
and that's I know that's the way I've been all these years, and that's a good way to be, because some people, they put up a wall sometimes when you wearing them on your sleeve like that. But when you go in, you go in very modestly and rip the place apart, and then they'll then you put something on their mind. you
Yeah,
know
and that last, like you said, that lasts longer. That
yeah,
has
that's
uh
long,
that goes beyond the notes. That goes after the show.
right.
People can, when you have a genuine spirit like that, I think people really appreciate that, because that's a rare quality. You know.
Right. So do you get a chance to run into Russell at all when you go up?
Uh yeah, we I check in with him every couple of months. He was a really important mentor for me.
Mhm.
Um he about man this is about 10, 15 years ago now. He uh who was it? Oh yeah, Calvin Keys actually told Russell Malone about me. I went out to California to visit my sister,
Right.
and I ended up hooking up with this great guitar player Calvin Keys, and you know played for him for a while. And I remember him saying, "Well, Dan, I don't believe there's anything I can show you." And then he played all this incredible stuff. And I was like, "Show me that." Show me, Uh, and then he was like, I'm gonna call Russell Malone and tell him about you, because it's refreshing to hear a young brother on trying to take care of business on the guitar. So Russell called me out of just called me out of nowhere.
Mhm.
He was like, Dan Wilson, this is Russell Malone. I didn't believe him at first, and
Well, you got the voice pitch down pretty
oh
good.
yeah,
That's him, man. You sound like he's talking with one hand on his nostril or something. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. And yeah, man, he called me out of nowhere, and we got to talking, just about growing up in the church, and all the gospel guitar players that we loved. He mentioned Howard Carroll from the Dixie Hummingbirds,
Right. That was
and
one of his favorite groups, man.
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
man. Uh, and just man, he has so many great stories. Like, and sometimes I'll ask him just to I'll ask him about a certain story that he's told me many times. And it's nice because he humors me, because
Mhm.
I wanna remember these things.
Oh, well, definitely, man. Well, if you want some more stories that's deep, then we'll talk about them. You know,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I'll put all this business in the street.
Oh, okay, we do that off the air.
Yeah, most
Yeah.
definitely off the air. You know, but I know that you have an online you're teaching online right now.
Yeah.
How accepting as far as what you're teaching? Do you get a lot of young students, let's say high school students or first year college or something?
Yeah, a lot of younger ones. There's some high school age students. There's adult students. It kind of runs the gamut. Whoever knows how to operate a computer. You know,
Right, right,
and I've taken some beginners.
right,
And that's been a humbling experience for me to have to go back and explain the most basic concepts,
right.
that you kind of gloss over them after a while, but then to have to go back
Hmm.
Right.
and explain them is really, it's like, oh shoot, I really have to know this stuff, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You left it in the back for so long. I understand
Exactly,
for sure.
exactly.
Now,
Mhm.
now, today, I heard you doing some cover stuff on your previous album. something creeping Stevie Wonder tune, and
Oh yeah.
and the arrangement you had on that. What you told us earlier that you probably got the notion to do that kind of stuff. Do you do many other covers from other artists that's like that with R&B?
Absolutely, absolutely, man. This, my folks had they have an extensive record collection. So when I was younger, I would just go through that, and especially when I landed on Stevie Wonder, I'd hear all the stuff I loved about jazz. There was what's that tune off of Songs in the Key of Life? Summer Soft, Summer
Okay.
Soft, and it goes through all these, all these really complex harmonic changes.
Wow.
you know, and I'm like, man, that's what I mean about the music existing in a continuum.
Right.
I put Stevie Wonder as a composer. I put him up there with. I mean, he wasn't writing. He wasn't orchestrating like Duke Ellington. But I mean, as far as the strength of his songs,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, I
Right.
put him up there. I put him up there.
They got longevity, man. They'll be here.
They're timeless. They're
When
Well,
timeless.
all of the rest of it's out of here, he'll be there. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, man.
and Stevie was a student. Stevie was a student of the music long before he started recording for Motown. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I was watching a documentary about Motown, one of the last one that was done with Barry and Smokey, and they had some footage of when they would go out on the road and play all the venues and stuff during the 1960s. They called it the Motown Review when they were on the buses going across the country. And I saw this scene where Stevie was playing harmonica and he was doing fingertips. And it just reminded me of a big band, an orchestra behind him. And I almost felt like that could have been Ella Fitzgerald in the Count Basie Orchestra. I mean,
Yeah.
it just was that line from the 1940s when swing was so strong, and it looked like it was like a concert or at a nightclub with Count Basie, and it could have been Billy Eckstine up there singing, but Stevie was on harmonica, and it
Yeah.
was. I said, we we gotta do something about this because
Yeah.
it's almost like where are we aware of how long and rich and fruitful this music has been,
Yeah.
and people don't recognize that because I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's so impressive how we have kept that history for so long, and when you talk about Stevie as a composer, he ranks up there with Gershwin.
Oh yeah.
He ranks up there with Cole Porter.
Yep.
I mean, you name it, the American lexicon of great composers and arrangers and all of that. There's no question in my mind where Stevie Wonder is in that pantheon.
Yeah, man. And just to even if you take away the music, his lyrics can double as poetry. You know, I'm arranging a Stevie Wonder show now that we got a bunch of gigs in July and August. This thing I do an organ trio and 3 singers, and so we do all Stevie Wonder music. And as I'm like transcribing the stuff and arranging it, every time I run across a lyric, I'm just like, oh my goodness, there was just that one on as just as time knew to move on from the beginting, and the
Right.
seasons know
Right.
exactly when to change. I mean that's just like really something. When he says at the end, when he says, "We all know sometimes life's hates and troubles will make you wish you were born in another time and space, but you can bet your life times that and twice, that's double, that God knew exactly where He wanted you to be placed."
Yeah, he is the poet, that's for sure.
I
Oh
mean,
my
like,
gosh, yeah.
who else is
Yeah.
doing that? You know?
Who wrote that?
Right.
Where
Right.
does that come from?
Yeah.
That's right, man. Well,
Yeah.
that's that inner soul thing we were talking about earlier,
Absolutely.
Woo!
tapping on it, whether it be through poetry or be through the music, you know what I'm saying? It's one and the same,
Yeah.
it's just that he's that vessel for having both,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
kind of cool. Uh, what do you think, Dan, like in the direction of, I call it mainstream radio. I'm talking about radios that pretty much are for profit, abandoning the jazz music that used to be pretty well, it wasn't dominant, but there was a presence there that was all inspiring to any musician or singer. Uh, what do you think with everything now? I mean, you see like the Grammys, for instance, but when you see the Grammys, you don't see any of the jazz performances or performers. And I
Yeah.
remember growing up, we used to see everything from, poets to jazz to everything, when it was the Grammys back in the day.
Mhm.
But what do you think about the musicians or so-called musicians that are out there now, especially the younger ones?
I think there's still some gifted musicians out there, and some really good songwriters. But I think it's important to put that in context because, you know, as I think we have to go back to when uh, music television or music videos became the way that an artist was premiered. Then
Mhm.
because like back in the day, artists had to premiere on the radio, so like that would require you to sound good, you know. But uh, if you premiere with a video, then you can be a great dancer and be just kind of an okay vocalist or an okay songwriter. Uh, so I think that really took over, and I think it's kind of shifting right now with the public having access to just all different kinds of things. Like in a way, streaming uh, kind of crippled the bank accounts of the artists, but it's kind of
Mhm.
exposing younger people to a lot of different kinds of music. So that's one silver lining I see there. But as far as the change uh, in in the quality of the music and having jazz kind of at the forefront and now in the background, I would say that I think music videos really kind of help usher in that new era.
Yeah, that would be definitely one of the starting points,
Yeah.
because I think it pretty much broke ground in the early '80s with the video stuff.
Hmm.
And then, like you said, it was not the music that was not that important. It was the image that they were selling, and which at the same time, it was a heck of a marketing tool because a lot of people, corporations made a lot of money off of that imaging, you
Oh
know.
yeah. Oh
Yeah, the
yeah.
imaging was
Mhm.
so critical, as far as moving the actual musicians that had compositions that were actually into the music, that were in musically coming off of the old like orchestral type arrangements,
Yeah.
and on a radio, uh, it pretty much destroyed it,
Mm.
as far as that goes. And the only, like you say, the only place now you can get it is simply because we have the internet,
Yeah.
which
And
is
I don't want to say I don't want to make it seem like I don't enjoy some of that music from the '80s. I dig some of that the '80s pop and some of the even like some of the like the '80s funk like Cameo. They had that album 1980. I dig that
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
but now I'm talking about basically the the concept of the music,
Sure.
not necessarily from the 80s, but right now what we hear now is they're trying to
Yeah.
do a reverse situation on it, where they're going backwards to get more R&B cover stuff and
Mhm.
recreate and basically trying to recreate that.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I hear now. You hear now they list the category of R&B now is a totally different category from R&B when I was coming through the ranks. And
Right.
but I noticed that they're getting a lot of that material, and that's becoming mainstream again. The arrangement's a little different, but for the most part, that's only because of the automation of the instruments. The keyboard sounds that are taking over a whole lot of other mainstream players' gigs and stuff like that. But
Right.
but but do you think the jazz will be able to come back within, let's say, I mean, you can say in the next 5 years, to be at least acknowledged on mainstream? You know.
I think so. As I think right now we're living kind of in an age of reckoning. There's a lot of reckonings happening. There's a lot of stuff happening with women's rights and with civil rights for all for all different groups of people. So I think there's kind of like a paradigm shift in the way people are thinking, and I think that's gonna extend over to music. I mean that's my prediction. I don't know how accurate that might be, but uh, you have different artists like Robert Glasper's one, where he's huge into hip hop and to R&B. That's like his foundation. But he spent some time in the jazz world, and he's kind of mixing it. And it's like I said earlier, all this stuff, uh, all this black music exists in a continuum. So while some more traditionalists might feel that that's kind of a detraction from 4/4 swinging. I find no fault in that. I like to do both. When I'm swinging, I want to swing. But
Hmm.
I also dig the R&B influence, the soul influence, and the gospel influence. Uh, and I think if we can bring those worlds together, I think, man, I think that'll be the ticket.
Well, that's in my opinion. I think that's where it's going anyway.
Yeah.
Simply because I was in a situation where, uh, of course, I started out like I did, all the way through the graduation periods, to the church, the gospel, the rhythm and blues, the funk, the jazz, the what they used to call fusion, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'd already been through, and I can hear elements of the newer stuff that's being played,
Hmm.
that was actually picked up from that environment. You mentioned Robert Glasper, which reminds me of that same type of a player who's actually meshing all of this together, and coming off pretty well with it. And
Yeah.
and getting a lot of, he gets a lot of attention with it, simply because you know how it is with an audience.
Sure.
You can't please everybody, but
Yeah.
if you come out more like Santa Claus, you got something for everybody. You get
That's
something in
it.
the bag for everybody. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
But Vaughn, what you want to say anything else?
Um, you know, I guess as a standard line of statements that I usually make, being a broadcaster is kind of like you got all of this wealth in front of you, music wise, but then again, I'm fortunate enough to be in a situation where, being on internet radio, I don't have the pressures of always sticking to a playlist that has just the top 20 artists on it. Although, they deserve to have, their plays on the radio stations and get their name out there. But I delve back, because like I've been studying this whole concept right now going on with the discrimination against smooth jazz right now in radio, especially in the jazz medium, because you have a lot of people that have been in the business and musicians and artists that have played this music for so long, and they think that if you can master bebop and hard bop and traditional jazz compositions and stuff like that, and play like Thelonious Monk and Art Tatum and all these rhythms coming out of the past, smooth jazz doesn't belong in any connection with the past of the greats. But I've had the opportunity to do some research on it and came across this dissertation by a gentleman who graduated from the University of Texas, North Texas, and he's got a 248 dossier saying that smooth jazz belongs on the tree. It should be recognized as an important aspect, because I looked at it as though he's talking about the evolution of coming from the hard bop era, when a lot of the inner city sounds and the church sounds came into jazz, and how it was influenced and played strongly by the Horace Silvers and the Jazz Messengers and Hank Mobley and all of these young cats that were doing some special work back in the 50s, the Dexter Gordons and the Donald Byrds, and so, and it just evolved. And you talked about your ability, what you're doing with playing popular tunes. Wes Montgomery played popular tunes when he was at CTI, and so I'm like, how can you separate that from where it came from? And Wes made some phenomenal tunes, made some incredible interpretations of songs like Windy and all these other great songs that he would do. And it's like, but it didn't separate. I mean, he still did these great solos, and he kept the traditional jazz in the music. So,
that's such an important point. I mean, there people can act like there's no such there is no such thing as good smooth jazz. I mean, if the players are playing well, I mean that's kind of it. If it sounds good, and they're playing with skill. I mean, I've heard some terrible smooth jazz. I've heard some terrible smooth jazz.
I have too. Yeah,
I've heard some terrible straight ahead. But like when I hear Wes, like I challenge anybody to play.
There you go.
A little bump in there.
Yeah, I challenge.
There you go.
I challenge anybody to operate in a space that small and play that much music.
Right, and that's the whole deal right there. It's knowing how to get inside the music, both harmonically as well as linearly. If you think that, I think the separation that you were talking about earlier, Vaughn, was really, it's not on the musician. You know what I'm saying? It's not the musician that's labeling, and really separating these things. It's pretty much, companies that that have monetized everything and found out there's an audience for it and they can sell this or sell that. The musician is fine.
Yeah, and you said it. That is, a lot of times it is the companies, and they go for the low hanging fruit a lot of times.
Most of the time.
Yeah, right. So
I didn't want you to be too modest,
Yeah, right. It's like it's funny. My wife hears all these my frustrations with some of these companies, like where I call it's like musical McDonald's. It's billions and billions served, but it's not necessarily doing you any good.
Right. There you go.
Exactly.
It's easy going down, but man, it's eating you up.
Yeah, right.
You're
one way
gonna
or
be
the other.
ruined later on. You got that right.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
Cool. So where you headed, man? You got anything scheduled since the pandemic? Are you back out, or have they, picked up a tour schedule for you or anything?
Yeah, thankfully, I got some things. I got a bunch of shows like that Stevie Wonder show I'm doing in July. I'm also arranging a quintet show, uh, series of quintet shows. We're doing the music of uh, like jazz from the '60s. So we're doing like some of Miles' music from the '60s, some of Wayne Shorter's music, um, even some Grant Green. Um,
Mm.
we got Joe Henderson from that period, and some Herbie Hancock. So we're putting together a show with that. So we're doing those all in Cleveland uh, in July and August, and then I have uh, some gigs with McBride coming up. I think we're playing in Aspen, Colorado, the beginning of August, and we have some things in New York mid August, and see September. I'm doing uh, the Vail Jazz Party in
Yeah,
Vail,
yeah,
Colorado.
Colorado, right?
Uh,
Mm.
and so I'm trying to convince Lewis Nash and John Clayton are going to be there. So I'm trying to convince the guy who runs the festival put me with those guys.
Okay.
Uh, so I'm just trying to weasel my way in there.
Yeah. Well, that's hey man, we got to fight for everything.
That's right. That's right. I'm like, they're gonna be
Right.
there. You ain't got to do much
Right.
logistics.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, if you can you like as far as the new project that you have, I know that you'll be doing some stuff with Jazz Matters. I
Yes.
think it's going to be virtual. So, uh, are you going to pretty much basically introduce the new stuff, or are you going to do a little bit of both?
I think we're gonna do a bit of both because like I always like the live shows to be spontaneous.
Right.
Like it's nice to have the record, but the record is just a snapshot of what can what can happen in a live situation. You know, uh, when you get on the bandstand, especially with a great band, you don't know where it's gonna take you. So
Right.
I try to leave myself, kind of open to the moment.
Right.
Uh, in that case,
Yeah. So Jazz Matters will be doing a virtual concert with Dan, and we'll be doing that a little bit later in the summer. So make sure you check out the website yesjazzmatters.org, and so you can get the all the information that will be put out there, and when you can tune in to that, where you can get tickets or whatever. And then we're gonna finally, as long as since we've been, as far as musicians go, it's been a rough year last year,
yeah,
and so we all basically getting up, scrambling, trying to run and get it. Hoping like that. Later this year and maybe next year, we'll be a little bit more together as far as the venues, and I hope that the venues are still available. That's the other thing too.
yeah,
A lot of them have closed doors, which is not one of the things that we wanted to see happen, but it happened, and
yeah.
we're hoping that all of that will help us out next year. As a matter of fact, I think that if the public would get on board with the protocols, and we can get things done a lot faster, and because I don't think we really want a variance that we're not ready for because enough people hadn't gotten vaccinated. You know
Man,
what I'm
that's
saying?
so real.
And see and yeah, it's definitely real because
Yeah,
we don't know where this thing come from. But the thing about it is, the more people that seem to are seeming to go ahead and bite the bullet and get it. I don't think we may not get to the point that we want necessarily, but I think there'll be enough for certain things to happen for us as musicians and so forth. So Dan, take us out with a little, like about a little something from the new album or whatever you feel like doing.
All right, all right. Let's see. Let's see what
All right, Dan.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And let the folks know
Wow.
what that was you were doing.
That was a John
Right.
Coltrane composition called "After the Rain."
There it
I love
is.
that period of
Mm.
rain.
Yeah. Now I usually hear saxophone players do it, and when I was listening, I said, okay, he's doing a train here, and which is a cool one, which is also good,
Oh man,
Uh,
gotta have
that's
that.
that's just a preview of what's to come. Let's say it like that.
Yes,
All
sir.
right,
Wow.
Dan.
Yes,
So
sir.
Dan, where can people get you? Whether on the social media platforms, where can they find out more about you? Get your music, everything.
Yeah, I have all my stuff up at danwilsonguitar.com. I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram, Dan Wilson Guitar, Twitter, Dan Wilson Guitar. And you can also get the album at macavenue.com. Um, but yeah, all my previous albums you can get them right at danwilsonguitar.com.
Okay then. And Vaughn, you know where we got to go with
Yeah,
that.
you can find me at on Instagram, Vaughn Coulter, and you can see, where you can find me on Jazz Beats Radio at jazzbeatsradio.com. That's the webpage for the radio station, and also I have a Twitter, which is I have two Twitter pages. I'm sorry, Ain't Nothing But Soul one, and I also have Soulscapes one. So Soulscapes is my show, and I play all things jazz and strong into Brazilian and Latin music, and so it's a global sound, and that's what we're all about at Jazz Beats Radio, because we are the beats of the world. Um, but I got to tell you, tomorrow night we have a concert we're doing it here in Atlanta, and we're still trying to get everything organized. We got headlining one Mr. Frank McCombs is coming into town,
Woo!
brilliant keyboard
Ohio.
artist, and yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, your brother from Cleveland.
Yes,
And
sir.
so, we're looking forward to that brother doing what Frank does, and he's going to be joined by Allison Williams, a vocalist, coming in. And so, the music continues, man. And pushing this art form is pretty much what I'm all about. And like I said, you can find me at all those platforms. And you know, Dan, you got to come to Atlanta, brother. That's all I got to tell you.
Hey
Oh,
man,
hey
you
man, the
tell me where
pandemic was the only
when.
thing. Pandemic was the only thing that stopped him.
Yeah, man. You
That
know,
was it.
I'm actually going to be there in November.
Okay.
with Terry Lynn Carrington.
Wow.
When do we come? November the 20th, I believe.
Mhm.
I will let the general
Well,
manager and our fearless leader know about that, because
Mhm.
man, we can't wait to get you here. I'll
Hey
tell you that
man,
right now.
yeah. I've
I
been
love
trying for
you.
2 years, man. So you know how it is. I'm still working on it, but
We
he'll
gonna
be
do
here. I mean, he'll be here. That's for sure. And
it. Yeah,
you can, of course, catch us over here at Jazz Matters at the website is yesjazzmatters.org, and make sure you go in and check with us as far as what we're doing. We will be starting our concert series again at the Wren's Nest, and we will have, you know, probably a couple of other months going forward from there, and then you know, until the season actually is back into full swing. And that's yesjazzmatters.org. And definitely, Dan, we appreciate the fact that you know, you took a little time this morning and talk to us and get us to know you, so that when you come here, you won't be a stranger.
yes, sir, man. Well, it's great to meet y'all, and thank you for having me.
All right, man. So Vaughn,
Well, it's been our pleasure.
yeah, we okay. So we out, man. Appreciate it.
All right, now, y'all
All
have a
right,
good one.
thanks,
All
man.
right.
You too.
Peace.
Peace.